you're a business owner and you're facing very important decision, whether to migrate to Linux or not. So maybe you're using Windows or maybe you're using Apple device and you're thinking about making this important transition. So today I'm going to ask our expert, who's done it several times in his career. And in this episode, he's going to show us all the benefits, all the advantages and disadvantages of Linux. So maybe after this episode, you will come back with this answer to the question whether it's good to migrate to Linux. This is Beyond Big Tech, a founder's journey to digital sovereignty. My name is Wojtek, and my friend Tom is a co-host. He's an IT and cybersecurity expert with loads of experience in tech. So in this podcast, we'll be showing you anything around moving to sovereign solutions from hardware, software point of view, tackling all the important news as well at the same time. And also we're going to have a bit of Tech Academy. Tom, I'm so glad that we're doing this together. Without you as an expert, I would be very lonely guy here. Just me and my hat.
Morning, everybody. So this is episode number 2. So the first part of our podcast will cover some news from the world. And after that, a little bit of Linux journey.
Digital sovereignty has been a very big buzzword for the last couple of years. Big decisions being made by European Union, by UK, and many individual countries in Denmark, France, Germany. And obviously, the main headline is that France ordered every government ministry to formally exit Windows for Linux across all 2.5 million civil servant workstations, with full migration plans due autumn 2026. It's explicitly framed as a sovereignty, not a cost-saving exercise as it used to be in the past. We have Schleswig-Holstein in Germany. So their decision was 80% through migrating 30,000 workstations, saving 15 million euros in licensing in 2026 alone. So, Tom, my question to you would be, how does this apply to small business owners or a bit bigger organizations, but from a kind of SME point of view? What do you think about this movement going on at the moment?
Well, I think it's a really, really good way, because until now, what we've been facing is there is this commercial company. In this case, obviously, it's Microsoft, but it could apply to any other, Apple, Amazon, what have you. And they keep all the keys, they keep all the cards, so they can change and basically influence what's happening. In a sense, that you have a house, yes, or an office, and you build the office, you build everything, but all the locks to all rooms are basically held by different company, yes, which could be your competition. So basically you say like, oh, I want to go to this room because I need to do something in that room. And let's say if the cooperation is good, yes, two countries are not fighting, yeah, those two businesses are not fighting, might be perfectly fine, perfectly reasonable. But if for any reason the relationship deteriorates to the, let's say, very aggressive situation, your competition could simply say like, I'm not opening your door. And now you're stuck, you have a problem on your hands. So going to open standards, yes, and this is really critical. Going to open standards means my data can't become a hostage in any kind of political battle between governments or even businesses. The thing is, the government can't go and say to all businesses, change to this because we think it's better. Yes, this will be done on commercial basis and potentially partly as well by, pragmatism and the financial side. But the government might say, look, we have a certain leverage within our systems, so we will be first. So if you have like lots of organization which support certain movement, that can make easier for other people around to support that, because the government is, let's say, I don't know, let's say 40,000 workstations, but that's not where it ends. There are other businesses that works with them. And if they don't have to use, let's say, Microsoft Office, but they can use LibreOffice or something else, that suddenly allows other organizations to spread. And because of the network effects means the more organizations start using a certain system, then it's easier and there's more benefit for everybody else to join because they multiply the benefit. Yeah. So yeah, I believe it's a really good way of keeping our data independent. And
this is valid point. Sorry to barge in, but this is crucial what you just said, because this is not just about the governments, right? Because this is the whole ecosystem. So all the organizations and all the small businesses working with the governments will be encouraged to switch to completely new ecosystem, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, rather than paying to a big tech company, there is a bigger chance to find somebody who does within Europe the same functionality and basically spend our money with these guys and actually provide better support. So the money stays within Europe. It's not going somewhere abroad, whether it's China, whether it's US, but actually stays within us and provides more value to us.
Interesting. But okay, we had in the past situation when Munich tried 20 years ago to migrate to LiMux and they failed. And maybe this could happen again. What do you think?
Of course, always can, because you got used to certain tools, certain workflow, and Microsoft and other big tech, they got a lot of leverage. Frequently, if you just do euro to euro, then Microsoft and other big tech, they got a lot of leverage because they see, oh, there's a threatening moment, there's a political movement. They can lower the prices to make the financial side basically collapse because we were trying to save the money. Now we actually not saving any money. And basically they wait for the moment to pass. So once the danger for the big tech is gone, they can very quickly restore quietly over a period of time, restore the prices where they were and continue business as usual. But if you're doing it because you understand that there's a bit more than just the financial side, obviously it gives you something Microsoft can't battle. Yes. Although they do try, there is like a watered down warranty where big tech is basically creating businesses which try to look like independent, but actually in truth and honestly, they just, like big tech in disguise. Yeah. So we have to be careful about that as well. So we don't fall for just that kind of a smart marketing.
Now that's a really important point because there are a lot of solutions on the market, which, like you said, they're calling themselves sovereign, but they are owned or partially owned by the US big tech. So there are some players like that in the cloud market in Europe, for example, calling themselves fully European sovereign solution or cloud, and then they are owned by the US.
Yeah, cheeky buggers.
We did this side and kind of moving the full data security and digital sovereignty and talking about the practical implications of moving to Linux. So you've been testing Linux many times in the past, and now you're in the middle of this switch to Linux. So you moved from Apple device, right?
Yeah, I mean, my role obviously, I'm in a tech, so obviously I have this opportunity every couple of years as a way of experiment and seeing what's in the market. I move from Windows, Mac to Linux, Windows, Mac to Linux. So I have a better understanding of what's happening. So I've been using Linux close to 30 years. Now, most of the time, I stay either on Windows or macOS. And ever so often, the Linux was there. The reason I usually withdrawn from Linux, it was basically lack of compatibility. So when you run a business, you are expected to fulfill certain stuff, like send emails correctly so they display, write documents which will look exactly the same on my customer machine and so on. Back in the time, that was really, really challenging and you had to put a lot of effort. At the beginning of a year, I decided to, because of the sovereign movement and so on, I decided to move to Linux machine and see how it goes. And to be fair, they moved so much, since the last time I tried in 2020. I was really positively surprised. So the machine, it works flawlessly. Now, one of the news which we prepare as well for here was that Microsoft is extending Windows 10 support for another year until 2027. And why? Because majority of the users, I think something like 60% of Windows 10 users, they want to stay on Windows 10. Why? Because it's working. They don't want to suddenly change their workflow. Linux is powerful because it's open source. So imagine a situation, you have a workflow, you have a team of people, and you have this specific way how your business runs. Now, with closed source, which will be Windows, Mac, and so on, if the company decides, that's it, we're finishing, you pretty much have to adapt. You have no other option. You've been faced with the reality, and that's it. With open source, which part of it is Linux, if you want, you can employ even a developer or do it yourself if you have enough skill and maintain the changes or improve what you need. And you can submit then later this to the open community so other people can use it as well. And you can continue using it the same way. So although there is a lot of choice, which can be sometimes overwhelming, it gives you so much freedom because you can decide how you use your system and you're not told by somebody else who is thousands of miles away from you. And they decide, okay, we're not going to pay any more time of our engineers and you have to move to something else.
Interesting. By the way, I double checked. Windows 10 will turn 11 in July this year. So literally in a couple of days, Windows 10 will be 11.
What the plan? Windows 10 will become 11.
There you go. Interesting. So now being in this transition to Linux, are there any workflows that you would say, oh, this works better on Windows or this works better on Apple or Mac? Can you share some spicy stuff? Or maybe, in general, Linux is just good enough for majority of the stuff. Tell us more.
The thing is, it's entirely up to you. Any underdog, any contender will always face the same problem, which is basically people got used to certain things. So you have your favorite coffee, you know how it tastes. Now trying another one, it might bring different flavor, different taste, or you try different machine. It will do stuff in a slightly different way. Electric cars versus combustion engine. It works in a different way. So the first obstacle is basically people got used to certain things and they don't want to change. And with Linux, it's exactly the same. So Linux either needs to adapt it, let's say the workstations, they need to try to imitate what Windows or Mac is doing. And then people are like, I don't like this. Or if they come with an open mind and they say, okay, some things might work slightly differently, but what they might decide, actually, do you know what? This works much better. Because the closed source, yes, like Windows and Mac OS, they take a lot of ability from you to choose what's better. So imagine you have a house and every house in the country looks pretty much the same. Yes. And I don't mean like we have toilet and kitchen and bedroom and so on, but they look exactly the same. Yes. You have no customization, no tabs, everything is the same. Obviously it would be quite boring. And you would say like, well, hold on, I got quite good taste and designs. I could make it better. And you can't. With Linux, actually, you can make so many changes. It's simply impossible. And as well, the Linux can provide, let's say, stability, which Windows or Mac can't even match in.
What way? Give us some example.
Okay, so at the moment, I'm testing some new way of doing stuff on Linux, which is Fedora Desktop. It is atomic immutable system. So normally when you install a program is not just a program. A program is a small set of instructions, but they frequently rely on a shared component, which is called library. Those libraries basically are shared between applications so that you don't have to repeat the same type of job. Yeah. So imagine like going back to a house. So let's say you and your wife, they're using kitchen. Yes. But you will have same pans, same spices, same food. Yes, one of you will not have like a double because it makes no sense. Same with in computer when you develop programs and so on. The developers basically not to create too much chaos. They reuse a lot of basically copy the same libraries and they share the libraries. If there's a program which basically replaces the library, and let's say you have a newer version. The older program, which was relying on the older version, might basically crash. And sometimes that leads to a situation where like operating system can crash. Then you have the famous blue screen of death on Windows. Now, Fedora got a different approach. They say you can't make changes to your operating system, but because you want to keep your system up to date, we will create a new image of your operating system. We'll prepare everything, install everything in the background. And when you're ready, you click restart machine, and the new version of the operating system basically kicks in, and you can work on that. If for any reason that operation fails, like it can, because one of the programs changed something and suddenly the whole system become unstable, it's no problem. Then you go back to the previous image and you're back in business. You work as normal. However, if it works as normal, everything as expected, the main system, the new system becomes the dominant. And then again, when the new packages come in, which you need to update, they are being prepared as an image and they're waiting for you to restart the machine. Windows and Mac don't have anything as close to resemble this. Even majority of Linux distribution don't have that because it's a very new way of doing things. The disadvantage, it takes more space because you need to have two images of your operating system. But the advantage is, pretty much, you should not have a situation where you have a system that's broken and you can't operate. So imagine majority of IT problems are solved by this switch.
So basically, when you operate on Windows, on Mac, when your system is down, you will need someone like you to help out to get out of the problem. But with Linux, I guess, the system will go back to the other version, right? Is that
yes?
Sense?
Yes. Windows is basically trying to do this in a slightly different way. They create a snapshot of some of the files and then restore when it comes bad. But the problem is, if something bigger is basically messed up, or it goes for a while on Windows, then this frequently will fail because Windows basically gets a lot of junk. So using the silver blue approach, you create the full exact copy of your system. So you can go back very quickly and get working system within seconds.
So what about from practical point of view? I mean, I'm not a tech guy. So I'm a former lawyer that is learning about tech, went into full on into AI governance, connecting my legal expertise with the new technologies. So what I understand about Linux is that this is kind of like an engine, like a kernel core with many functionalities. And in practical way, how much does it take to learn operating on Linux setups with all its kind of distros per company, let's say with 50 employees?
And so Linux over the years becomes less and less reliant on what people always been afraid, like the black box where you have to type lots of commands and so on. It becomes more and more graphical environment.
Like you have terminal, it's called terminal, right? When you terminal, you need to show us this terminal because this is kind of like people like, oh, what's this terminal? It's like an airport terminal. Sorry to barge in.
I mean, using the CLI, like a text only for using of machine is extremely rewarding. Now, majority of people, they are afraid of the terminal, but once they start using it, they realize how flexible and how fast it is. So you can basically gain on the productivity because rather than looking through the jungle of all options and so on, you only type what you need to get. So obviously that's the power. That's why all the power users usually still refer to the text edition. Even Microsoft, which basically, since DOS practically tries to kill the terminal, they introduce something like Windows Linux subsystem, which brings Linux inside Windows because of the power. Now, if you have a business and you want to actually introduce Linux, first of all, you need to come with open mind. Yes, you need to understand that certain things will work in a different way. That doesn't mean worst; it means a different way. But not that much as you would expect, because the systems, they're getting very much similar. It's like driving a car, whether you're driving electric, petrol, diesel, it's very similar. On a petrol car, yes, you can have the gear stick, where on electric, you just go drive. But if you look on modern automatic cars, whether it's combustion engine or electric, you just press accelerate and that's it. So you have Linux machines. So what I'll do is I'll divide the company from departments and I would go with the people who are the most keen and see how they work, sit down with them, create one image, which basically represents their workflow. give a couple of people from each department to run a test, see whether they're happy with it. And once we see, yes, we actually can perform our work as expected, then I would start replacing the machines. My recommendation would be to do slow rollout. So all the new starters, so you have new people starting in the business, they will straight away get pre-configured machine with Linux and they get going straight away. Then if you have any kind of failure or slow machines replacement, I'll just replace them with the Linux machines. And then over a period of time, replace machines as they go and constantly refine the image, yes, the way how the software is, like how the desktop machine, the experience is delivered to people. And you could do that because Linux supports a lot of automation and customization out of box, way more than Windows or Mac. So this way you can basically safely bring the people across and give them a really enjoyable use of the machine.
I didn't know about this, that it's actually more options for automation. Thank you so much for sharing this, Tom. I heard a lot about entrepreneurs who are scared of Linux because there's a limited number of softwares and there are some applications that obviously the business people want to use, like, for example, WhatsApp. Can you run some of these on Linux as well?
Yes, and this is partly done. It's not just because of Linux, but actually the way how the market is evolving. We have one of the most dominant way of delivering software, which is called SaaS solutions, software as a service. And most of the time they run through the web browser. Because the problem you had is if you create a program for Windows, where majority of user used to be, then doing something for macOS or Linux or Android and so on become less tempting because majority of users most likely will be on your Windows. But because the changes in the market, there is no longer a situation where you have very single system like Windows and that's it. Yes. Now people will have a Windows machine. They will have let's say, maybe an iPad. So different systems, and you have to now make sure that your software, your solution works along all the devices. So having those SaaS machines allows you to pretty much be on any system, yes, and access it. So think of it this way. The SaaS, you have like 3 points, A, B, and C. And inside you have the solution, yes. Before that, the solution was very close to Windows and as far as possible from Mac and Linux. But now this thing is moving, yes, and is getting to be fair. First was moving towards Mac, and now it's moving like roughly in the middle. So all the solutions get better access to it. And if you see some of the situations, like, I don't know if you have what's your experience like searching something on Outlook? Yeah, I always had this problem. I never could find anything in Outlook. So I always had to ask my team, can you find this to me? Because I can't find this. Now I'm using Thunderbird. And for the first time in many years, I can find everything I want. So I click the search and it does work exactly as it should be. And even though in the background, we still have Office 365. So Outlook should do it, but it doesn't.
Imagine this. I take away your laptop with Linux. What would be the one feature that you would miss the most when it comes to Linux? Something that, oh my God, I'm really missing this part of Linux. I haven't prepared this question for you, and a lot of questions I'm asking that are literally off the cuff. But hey, here it is.
Well, the beauty of the thing is, what I would miss the most is the open source of the part. And I mean by open source, I don't mean in high level overview, like, where we have freedom of choice and no, the practicality. If you are within, let's say, Apple ecosystem, your stuff is there. And if for any reason you decide, actually, I want to change, the company made something, whether is they support some kind of political act, or maybe they throw at you a solution which you don't like. Let's say they forcing you to move from Windows 10 to Windows 11, or they introduce the glass, like Apple glass transparency, and you hate it because you can't read anything. With open source, you can move your data wherever you want and use that data without. So if something doesn't work, you just move that data easily to another place.
I've been reading about history of Linux, and kind of the main story around it as an open source software, which is absolutely amazing. But I wanted to answer this first question, which I asked you at the beginning of the show, is basically, what if the business owner comes to you and asks you the question, should we move to Linux? Because the renewals, the costs, the prices of the other solutions are going up. So should we move to Linux? What would be your honest answer to a business owner like that?
How to best answer the question? Definitely, it's a good idea to move to open source project because you are the key holder. Yes, because I can tell you about functionality of operating system and so on, and I could spend probably the rest of today explaining it. Fundamentally, for you as a manager, you don't care the color of the background, like where you click, is it start or something else, but actually whether you can operate your business. And with, let's say, a Linux as a desktop machine, you can pretty much be assured that they will work regardless of any political decisions or any decision by a single business that they say, we are not doing something or we're doing this way, and you have to accept it. From the perspective of just keeping your business safe and so you can survive, definitely it's a good idea. It's something which will pay you in a long term. It might be a short amount of pain, because obviously any migration, if you go from Windows to Mac, from Mac to Windows or to Linux, it will be some friction. But once the friction is done, your stability over a long time will pay you handsomely.
Thank you so much for this, Tom. I think if there are some people who are more convinced about moving to Linux, you're the guy to go, definitely, with your experience over 30 years of Linux. So shall we move on to the academic side of things?
Yeah,
education.
go on.
What do you think, Tom?
Go on. So basically, let's explain the academy. The academy is, I ask you a question and you have to provide me with the answer. So I'll give you three choices and your idea is to figure out which one is the correct. So the question number one is, what is Linux? Yes. Now, there are three options. Linux is a software which you install on your system and allows you to log on to the system and install applications and use it as your normal desktop or, let's say, desktop machine. Option number two, it is heart of your operating system, which basically connects all the ins and outs between the heart and the rest of the body. Yes, so you can use the computer. And the final one, number three, Linux is the creator of the software in open source community.
I think that it's option two. So Linux is the kernel, the core that connects all these different parts, which are functionalities. Also, because Linus Torvalds, I think that was the Finnish founder, right? Well, his name was Linus, but he created Linux and he created this open source solution. So from what I understand, what's different about it is that it's free to use by other people, developed by other people. So it's not like owned like Windows, for example, is owned by Microsoft, right? So that's what I understand. But going back to the question, I think the main answer would be B. The caveat with the C is basically it's the first name or kind of variation of the first name of the founder, but I would go with B.
So basically, just recap. Linux is just the part of the operating system. You could say it's a heart. So if we compare it to a body, it would be a heart or a brain. And it connects everything together. And on top of that, you have to basically add extra software because obviously you can't just operate with the heart, yes? You operate with the whole person.
Lawyer can learn, eh? Technology.
Question number two. Desktop environment is something which you see on the screen, yeah? So the way it basically display. And Linux offers you a lot of flexibility and freedom here. So let's talk about desktop manager. I'll give you a couple of names. You have to figure out which one is truly a desktop manager? Is it Kitty Terminal? Is it GNOME? Or is it KDE?
That's interesting. I have no idea what all these names are. What do they mean, honestly? I don't know. The GNOME sounds really cool. KDE?
So you're looking KDE, yes? So you're moving from GNOME to KDE?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. GNOME and KDE are the correct answer. Kitty is one of the terminals, so one of these black boxes which you can use to interact with your operating system, but obviously it does not allow you to open a web browser and use it. So for that, it's using a graphical environment, and there is a number of them. So KDE, it's GNOME, it's XFCE, Cosmic from System 76, Cinnamon, I think it's used by Mint. So there is a lot of them. Now, they do need one extra component, which is like slightly below. Linux got two versions, yes? The older version, which is over 30 years, I think more than that, it's called X11.org, which is basically old version of the graphical interface. So basically just make sure that the graphical system works, and then the KDE and the like do basically they give you look and feel specific to your needs. And now everybody moved from X11, which turns out to be very old and outdated, and obviously the things didn't work as expected. Everybody's moving now to a new system, which is called Wayland, which brings a lot of modernization and so on, but it was an extremely long and painful road on the Linux community because somebody had to take the reins and build it from scratch. And it's a big project, so it took many, many years to deliver.
So, for the record, guys, I've never used Linux, and the first time I saw Linux in life was when I saw Tom and his computer, and he was showing the screen, so yeah. Good guess, eh?
Yeah. Well done, Wojtek. You scored 2 points. So 2 questions, 2 points. Well done for this. I'll try to prepare more questions for next week. Let's see how you will score. So we'll keep the score and see how you're getting on.
Thank you. Thank you, my teacher. Really appreciate that. Guys, this was Beyond Big Tech podcast, Founder's Journey to Digital Sovereignty, where we review sovereigns beyond big tech. We also share news around technology, and we also educate ourselves. I mean, it's mainly me who is learning here, but I love it. So we're happy to share it with you. Tom, thank you so much for today. You're a fountain of knowledge with your practical tips. So thank you so much. It's a pleasure to co-host this podcast with you. And if you have any questions, let us know, share them. And is there any particular solution that you would like to share? Would you like us to review, to test them here? Let us know. Tom, thank you so much for today.
Thanks, Eras. Enjoy.